Yeah, no, we're actually in Ardmore. We're at home base right now, so we've been back for gosh, well, we've been back here for close to a month, but we've still been running and gunning. But we'll be here through the summer now, so till August. Yeah,
Yeah. Dang,
just
yeah, that'll
sweating it out.
be here before you know it.
Yeah,
Almost halfway through June already. That and
uh,
pardon my ignorance, but is that Ardmore, Alabama or Wyoming or
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma? Okay.
Yep, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's get around.
Ardmore.
I just don't read the road signs very often.
Yeah, Ardmore is, y'all may know where it is, but it's right in between Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma City. We're right in the middle, so hour and a half each way. So
Okay. That's
right,
making
right
sense.
down 35.
Yeah. Oh, so y'all are probably getting plenty warm right now then.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. It's hot. It's hot,
Yeah.
and it's humid here too. So we got the best of both worlds as well.
Yeah, gum.
Our,
Is it smoky down there right now at all?
Yeah.
Smoky, as in from
Fires.
the
Didn't
fire.
they have fires in Mexico or something blowing north?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
we got
nice.
no smoke. Yeah.
Good.
Had a ton of rain this summer or spring, so we weren't here for it. A lot of tornadoes and rain, but yeah, it's all that's kind of getting done. So we're going into the hot season.
Gotcha. So we've talked to a couple Oklahoma guys on here. Have you guys at the stage where you like go fully nocturnal with your livestock yet?
No, because when we're here, it's rope shop 100% of the time, unless we're outside just roping. So
Mhm.
here we're set up more like a horse facility. And when we're here, we're letting our horses rest. So it's kind of, if we need to practice, we'll practice hard going into a roping or just getting everything legged up. So it's more of a horse facility than cowboy and stuff. So,
Gotcha.
but this is kind of home base for all the travel, and then the rope shop. So when we're here, we're rope shopping it nonstop.
Gotcha. Is it like kind of all one property, like where you're at and the horses in the warehouse, or is that kind of just around Ardmore, different places?
No, we're the biggest mom and pop you've ever seen. So
Okay.
it's all here on one spot. So the when you see us online, and we've got awesome marketing. Dalton does great marketing, and so when you come here, if you're expecting NRS or something like that, you're going to be pretty disappointed because we're mom and pop. 99.9% of our stuff is online. So we market that way, we ship that way. You can come by, give us a call, and stop in, look at the ropes, swing them. We'll stand outside and hang out and rope with you. But yeah, we're mostly online. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Wow.
Good deal. Well, that's a good setup, at least, kind of. I know you guys said you're running around, but surely that kind of makes life simple when you're home, right? It's like it's all right there.
Yeah, the rope shop runs 24/7. It's like a dairy. It never shuts down. And we have people here that run the rope shop. So there's kind of a couple of different pieces to the puzzle. We've got kind of the cowboy crew, and then we've got the rope shop crew, and then we've got the marketing crew. Cowboy crew is able to. I mean, we go and work, and then if we're able, we video. Video kind of feeds the marketing for the rope shop, feeds the social media stuff, feeds the YouTube channel, and that's the cowboy crew. That's what we do. That's our part of it. As far as going out and working or putting on a roping or going to a roping, and then the marketing department takes that and turns that video into ads or posts, and then it goes out, and that in turn feeds the rope shop, and the rope shop sells ropes. So it's kind of a neat wheel that's got different cogs in it that it all kind of feeds itself. So everybody
Yeah.
needs everybody.
Sure.
So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'd be really curious, you know, a lot of our listeners will probably know what 310 Ranch Life is now, right? Seen you guys YouTube, Instagram, maybe met you guys at some point because like you said, you are going to ropings and everything. So I'm kind of curious, like how did this all get started? So like at some point, my understanding is ranch roping has kind of become popular maybe in like the last 40 years to like the level it is now. And you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but so at some point you kind of had to be into ranch roping, right? And then at some point you had to be into it enough where now you're like, you have a brand that's very synonymous with that world.
Right.
Yeah. So how did that all start for you?
Well, that's an interesting question. And it, uh, as far as the ranch roping goes, that was just a byproduct of what I did for a living. So I managed the health for a big cattle company down in Alabama. So in just south of Montgomery on the way 231 on the way to Troy, there's a big cattle company out there, and it's one of the best kept secrets in the Southeast. I mean, it should be a bucket list place for guys to want to go work. Those guys are really good at what they do as a stocker outfit, and I preconditioned all their cattle. I would start somewhere around 28,000 a year myself.
Wow.
So I was run ragged. So anyways, I did that for a long time, 11, 12 years. And so I always working for that company. There were three different companies right there that I worked for, but all of them were under the same name. And so working for them, it was a great place to work. They paid really good. If you worked hard, which we did, that's all we did was work. They treated you really good. Partnered with cattle with them, and so I loved being there. The I didn't get out at all. I was there long enough that I had lost all my contacts because I literally didn't go anywhere. I just worked every day. So there to try to shorten up the story, the ranch ropings that I started going to over there was just to get away. It's very rare that I could go to them. The first ones were actually in Georgia, and a guy named Bill Barnes put one of the first ones on that I went to. And it was just neat. It was a good group of guys that got together over there at his place and roped. I did not know it, but going to those ropings kind of set me up to for what was coming as far as needing help at the cattle company I worked at. So in the fall, we would have a fall run, and there's not a lot of guys down there with the skill set to doctor cattle horseback.
Can I ask you one question then,
Yeah.
John? So was it at this ranch? Because I understand there's a lot of cattle in the southeast, but there's not a lot of guys, relatively speaking, with slick horns and 60-foot ropes,
No.
right? So were you interested in that style of roping prior to coming to that outfit, or was that something that was there and you kind of learned it, or where did you get exposed to that style for the first time?
Let's see. I was actually in Birmingham, in Pinson. We lived up there, and I was riding for the public, starting colts, roping. And when I say roping, I was just roping. I learned to calf rope. That's how I began roping when I was 18, 19 years old. That's kind of you either team roped or you tried to you calf rope down there in the Southeast. That's kind of the deal. So I picked up a calf rope and I learned how to calf rope. I had that skill to go fast and rope something. But when I got exposed to that style of roping was really when Dave Weaver and Gwen put out that Californios video. I saw that for the first time, and I was like, "Man, this is too cool." So then I started kind of studying that, and I played with it, but it wasn't until I went to work to the cattle company and started, preconditioning calves full time that I really started applying what I had seen. So, but as far as slick horn and long rope, that was my first exposure, and it's kind of neat to get a ride with Dave. I'm kind of jumping and talk about this later, but I've looked up to him for a long time, and to get to work with him was pretty neat. But I just took what they had put out. It was a Brandon video, and I applied it to what I did, which was preconditioning doctor cattle, and it's the same principles. And we put our hands on a lot of cattle. So, and it, from there I was hooked. It worked, and the results that we've got at the cattle company from us doctoring that way was it's a really neat story how all that came about. But that's my first exposure. So
cool.
So you watch these videos and you were able to take that and apply it in your workplace. I guess you must have been in a position where, like other guys, that's the thing. Like I'm sure you worked with other guys. Were they pretty keen on picking that up and implementing that too, or were you out there by yourself doing this stuff?
No, it was me. There were other people that worked there, but when I say I managed the health, I was the health.
I got you.
It was me, and that's where the way that we doctored cattle. When I first got there, they really didn't even want you to carry a rope when I first got there. So there was a lot of stuff that had to happen for the protocol to change for how you doctored cattle there. So when I first got there, they didn't know me from Adam, and I walked in with my hat in my hand. It was, I guess, 05 or 08. I can't remember, but when the economy busted, and our cold starting just went to crap, and so I just had to go somewhere and find a job. So I walked in and I was just like, I need a job. And so, anyways, they gave me a job. I moved in down there on the place and then went to work. So they would either pull cattle. The whole place was set up to pull cattle, and they'd walk them miles. It was really ridiculous. But or you would dart them. So there were bump fed cattle, and then there were grass cattle, which were in grass traps. Or you would dart them. That was your first protocol. So, long story short, a year or so went by and the darts started failing. I kind of proved myself with those guys. Nobody else used dogs. They wouldn't let anybody use dogs. I could use dogs. And then I could rope, but I had to sneak around in rope before all of this happened. So, they knew I was roping, but if I had to rope something, I would just have to tell them I got to put my hands on it, and they would say okay. But if I said I was going to rope it, then they would send a bunch of help, and we'd have to pull it. So the dart guns failed, and it's a long story how all that happened, but they quit. They were half dosing the cattle, which put us in a wreck. And so it's creating a whole lot more work for me. And I just went into them and I said, at bare minimum, we've got to get the dope in the animal. So I'm gonna rope everything. And so they said, okay, do what you got to do. So from there, I was by myself, and I started doctoring cattle by myself, and that's kind of how I became handy at the one-man doctoring style of roping that we do our guapo competition, our roping competition. But anyways, so that led to me needing help during the fall, because the fall we would just load up on cheap cattle for grass for the spring, preconditioning them. So all those little ranch ropings that I'd gone to over in Georgia, those guys were from Kentucky and Tennessee, and they were studying the same stuff I was. They had this similar skill set, and so that gave me a pool of people that I could call and go, hey, can you sign on for 4 months and help me from September to December start these cattle? And they'd come in and we put them in a bunkhouse, pay them good, feed them good, and then provide their ropes. So anyways, the ranch roping for me was super practical, and that's where my work pool came from. It had I not done that, there would have been nobody around me. So
yeah. That's a lot of that seems like kind of the hard way to learn that skill set, because it's it puts a lot of pressure on you and your horse, right? Like a lot of ropers, you go and you rope, and maybe you go out with someone really experienced and they'll head something and kind of control the whole situation for you. So just doing a bunch of one-man doctoring. Obviously it seemed like it worked out for you, but that seems like kind of a baptism by fire a little bit.
Well, it was. I was prepared. I could rope. The way that I knew how to use the tools, because before I went down there, I was already feeding rope. I was already roping in the arena. I was already all of that. But putting that skill set into practice in a real world setting is what creates, the ability to do it well. And that's what happened. I mean, gosh, man, I'm not exaggerating. In the fall, we would doctor 35 to 50 head a day, and that was with help. During the summer, I was probably by myself. And this is this place was 6,000 acres, so I'm bouncing around all these preconditioned traps that are spread way out. So if I got a doctor 20 head, I'm covering a lot of country, going into all these different traps. So one, it was very necessary to set up shots by myself, because I couldn't run everything down. That was my last resort, was to run it down. So I would take the cattle, or find the calf and throw a long shot, throw a hula hand, whatever I had set up, take them to a fence corner, try to catch them on the move, one way or the other, to save my horse. It was something I get the maddest when I miss, because then I was putting more pressure on my horse, because usually you only get one shot to catch a calf that's kind of naive, or it sets up. So you're usually not going to get a second shot, and then you're going to have to run it down. So I feel like I had not done my part of the deal when I missed. So that was I was wound pretty tight when it came to catching and missing for myself, but it was baptism by fire for sure, because I went from first shot protocol was a dart gun or pull cattle, to first shot protocol was rope everything. And obviously it paid off. The numbers were fantastic. We went from an accepted. This is a high risk southeastern stocker operation, so it a 5 to 7% death loss and chronic rate is totally acceptable. And we dropped when we started roping everything. Joni, my wife, did all the books, so I had all the death loss stuff, all the medicine costs, all of that right at my fingertips on each set that I would do. And we dropped from our medicine consumption dropped drastically. Our death loss went from 5 to 7 to like a 1.8. And it was just because the animals were getting the dope. They were staying in their home pens. Like I wasn't pulling them, I was roping them in there, letting them go. So it changed everything. It was like a bonus at the end, the end of each set, how well the cattle did, So, but
Yeah.
it was just a tribute to having that skill and getting, keeping the cattle in their pen and then letting them go right there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how did that impact the workforce? Did you need a larger crew to pull that off, roping everything? And, salaries, did that affect anything? Or would you say it was the same benefit on the workforce side?
Well, in the fall, we ran so many more cattle. So in the fall, I would bring in 2 or 3 more guys to help me. We still didn't work together. We all worked separate, and that was a part of their deal. They would bring 3 to 4 horses. They could bring colts, but they needed to be able to do the job. They could push up in the morning to the pens and read health on their colts, but then they had to have something that was seasoned that they could do the job on. If they didn't, I was going to have to do all the work. And I'm all for bringing along young horses in a work environment, but if you do that and they can't cover their half of the load that they're toting, then they need to have something that's solid. And so that's what we required. But it was very rare that we worked together. So we would push up, make a list, split up, and then doctor cattle all day. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So earlier you were talking about how you were just kind of working, keeping your head down. You weren't getting out much. So after you started going to those ranch ropings, is that when you kept on working, kind of keeping your head down? Or at that point, after you had gone to a few ranch ropings, did you kind of stay going to ropings and kind of keeping in touch with folks?
No, I kept in touch with those guys. And once I started, there was no other place down there that was working like that, in that style of, roping long ropes and slick horns and stuff. So you had to have that skill set. You needed to be able to go slow, but you needed to be able to go fast too, So once that we started bringing guys in, that kind of became a thing to want to come down there and rope. So if I went to a ranch roping, there wasn't that many. I mean, there would be, maybe 1, 2 a year. And Bill put on, let's see, he put on one I went to, is the first one. And then the second one, he had a problem with the cattle, and Frank Dominguez was coming down and judging the roping because I think his daughter went to University of Kentucky or something, so he was just down. So that second one, they turned it into a clinic, a roping clinic, and that's the only clinic I've ever been to as far as that type thing went. So I went to that just because I'd paid an entry fee, and they were like, well, Frank's just going to do a clinic, and so you can just keep your entry fee and come to that since you're coming anyway. I was like, okay, well. So to answer your question, after that second one, Bill quit putting them on, and we started putting them on because there was just kind of a hole there, and it was fun to do. It was a good group of guys that was getting together. It wasn't a big group. We might have I don't know, 15, 20 teams at one of those deals, and then we started doing the one-man doctoring thing, which is that was a pretty neat deal. But that's where all that started, was when we started putting on the ropings ourselves. So
Yeah.
And when you were putting the ropings on, was that like John Darnell putting the ropings on, or was that 310 Ranch Life putting the ropings on? You know what I mean? Like, had the company been incepted yet?
no, that's a whole nother deal. We were just putting those on as like John Darnell. So
Yeah.
the cattle company I work for would sponsor them, because that's where our work pool was coming from. And
Oh, that's
310.
cool. So you really got those guys bought in then.
Oh yeah, no, they were
That's great.
like they couldn't even believe it. So they still, to this day, when we left, they went right back to the way they did things. So
No kidding.
well, there's nobody there to
Just no personnel.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I kind of had the in on the help, and nobody really wanted to come down there and work as hard as we were. The guys who came in the fall kind of got to eat the icing on the cake, but because that was the best of it. But
I'm not surprised. I just finished the stint spending quite a bit of time down in Georgia in that area. And there is a lot of cattle down there. And a lot of the local guys really admire, horsemanship and roping cows and stuff like that. But then if you say, hey, you want to buy a horse and take some roping lessons? They're like, no, I'm good. I've got this thing that I pull around with my four-wheeler and catch them up that way. So I'm not surprised. That makes sense. They've kind of reverted, but
yeah,
good opportunity. Somebody ought to go down there and start roping again.
Yeah, honestly, man, that cattle company is known for wrecking people as far as how much you work. Like,
Yeah,
it's not even like if you're not doctoring cattle, you're fixing fence. If you're not fixing or building fence or putting in water or cutting grass, or they'll tell you, and there's nothing the matter with it. That's what it takes, but to have that place like that. But they'll tell you when you get there, and it's funny, but they're not joking. He says, I require all my men to work half a day, and half a day is 12 hours, and they are not joking. Most of the time it was like 17, 18 hours days, and it's 7 days a week. You do get 2 weeks vacation after you've been there 2 years.
yeah.
But buddy, they're gonna, it's no joke. Anyway.
Yeah. That's, you see that a lot in the ranch environment, where either it's a mom and pop outfit and they're super lax and they're probably not turning the profit they could, and the people that work for them can kind of chill, or it's corporate run, but they don't, they carry over a lot of the forward thinking things from other corporate sectors, but they forget to invest in the people. And up front, when they hire you, say, hey, this year, you're getting paid this, and then make it look like maybe you're getting a bonus and give you a month off and whatever. Like if you went to go work for, John Deere or something. Right. But instead, like you said, after 5 years, we'll give you a week off or something. And it's there's kind of a gap between corporate ranch America and like mom and pop run ranches for the most part. There's exceptions, but
Well, this place is a family run deal. I've got all the respect in the world, because the owner who started it, he left home when he was 17. He was the oldest of 9. Had nothing but his saddle. Went to South Alabama and started cowboying down there. Started order buying. Built this thing. His 45-year-old cattle company down there. Both his sons were in it. They had built their own places as well. I worked for both of them at some point in time. But super good family, just hard working. And they just, I can remember the day I rode around with the owner of the place that had started it. And I, I can't. I just naively told him. I said, I want to start cattle for you. And I said, this looks like a very successful place from the outside. And he says, it is. He says, but it just takes everything you got and hard work. And I mean, I don't mind that. That's what I do. We just go hard, and I enjoyed every minute I was there. But they used me. So
Yeah. So is that where your kids grew up for the most part?
yeah, Dalton. Yeah, yeah. They were. That's pretty much why I stayed in Alabama as long as I did, because I married their mama really young. We ended up getting a divorce, and so I stayed for Dalton and Lakin down there. I would have jumped the river a long time ago from the get go, but I stayed until both of them were out of high school and kind of in college doing their own thing. And fortunately, Dalton hooked on, and he got the cowboying too, and so we got to do a lot of that. Right, he worked with me at the cattle company, so it was good.
Yeah. So where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in Anchorage, or not Anchorage, Soldotna, Alaska.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And then I grew up in Texas, Grapevine, Texas, which then, when I was a kid, it was just a cow pasture and a feed yard or a feedlot there, or a feed mill. Now it's just it's Dallas now, or Fort Worth. It's just it's huge. But I was there till I was 8th grade, and my dad was a pastor. He moved back to Alabama. That's where he was from. It's funny because it's ironic. I always tell people this. My mom's side of the family ranched in Idaho, Idaho Falls, Washington State. They were in Canada too. And I never knew they did that. I knew my grandparents. They lost that place. My mom was on it for a little while, but they didn't really talk about why they lost it or how they lost it. They ended up moving to Alaska after that. But to me, I found that out later on in life. My uncle wrote an autobiography, and he talked about the ranch there in Idaho Falls. How they grew potatoes. They had a feed yard. They had guys working for them, a bunkhouse. They gathered cattle, roped cattle just like I did. But it's ironic to me that I picked up that style of roping and never experienced my mom's side of the family or even knew that they were from that area. So it's pretty eye-opening or surprising thing that I'm in central Alabama, and that style of roping, I pick it up. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just meant to be.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
So I guess moving forward from there, at somewhere in here between putting on some ranch ropings and where you're at now, you started selling some ropes. Or how did that come about? Because I want to ask you about this too, but I would like to know about kind of the inception first. But then I also am very curious. So I'm good friends with Marty Murdoch. I know you guys know him, and I saw all you guys at the Pro-Am. But and Marty was there. But I know I asked Marty one time about 310 and what it meant or whatever, and he described it to me, and frankly I don't recall it exactly. I remember part of it, but I'm really curious about that. But if you could just kind of outline what came first, I guess, with moving into the inception of 310.
Okay, so just to back up, you talked about Marty. When we lived in Pinson and we were working up there, kind of starving and riding horses for the public and all. And I met Marty. He was pretty much my neighbor down the road a little ways. So when we were up there, we started 310 Equine, and that's what the name of our um, horse deal was. And we made it a 501c3 because we were going to do we got paid to ride horses, but 310 Equine was set up to do kind of as a nonprofit, so that we would do what we called a day in the round pen. So and we would invite people up, and I'd start a colt, talk about God. Joni, my wife, she would do a demonstration with a horse, and there was 4 different deals that we did with another friend of ours that was kind of just presented the gospel and then our walk with God as believers or Christians. So that was the beginning of 310 Equine. But that whole place up there was kind of designed to start colts, ride 60, 90-day horses, and then do those demonstrations. We had, you could come and watch your horse being started or watch your horse being trained. I'd work with you and your horse, or we would do the day in the round pen. So that was nutshelling that. That was the beginning of 310. That went dormant when I went to the cattle company, which was fine. And we just kind of pushed it to the side. We kept the nonprofit open just in case we needed it to do a benefit roping or something like that. We didn't know. But the ropes came with the work. So I used the ropes. The ropes we used, we bought from Cowboy Cordage. So we bought from for all the guys that came to work with us in the fall. So we would buy big or spool of rope or just individual ropes, and we'd provide ropes because I could burn up a good poly in like 13 days. And so we'd run through them really quick. And that's seeing the lead through the sucker, So we provided the ropes for the guys. And so to cheapen that up, we decided with the cattle company that we would get a dealership from Cowboy Cordage to cheapen the ropes up. That was the whole point of it. And that was me riding for the brand. I didn't have any, we didn't have any intentions of selling ropes. It was strictly to cheapen up the cost of us using so many during the fall. So we put on a roping. The cattle company sponsored the roping. And I told Joni, I said, you should just get 15 ropes and let's take them to the roping and see if they'll sell. And so we did, and we still got video. You can go look that up. The video of that roping, there's like 15 ropes laid out on a table, and every one of them got gone. And those guys, they might order ropes, but they didn't get to put their hands on stuff, So they were all bought up, bunch of 60-foot polys. Everybody was super excited. And so I was like, wow, that really went good. So that is where we started to see, well, this could be a thing for the cattle company. And this keeps getting deeper and deeper. That particular cattle company had a medicine company as well. It was called Stocker Supply. So they provided for the Southeast animal health medicine, which went really good with having a gigantic stocker outfit,
Yeah.
So we thought, well, we'll just bring ropes. We got a storefront. We'll bring ropes in there and see if they'll sell. But in the meantime, Dalton, my son, had come to work for us, and that's when he first got me to wear a GoPro. And he was dragging off deads, putting out hay, building fence, and he was watching us from the tractor Dr. Cattle, and I told him, I said, there's two jobs here. You either Dr. Cattle or you do what you're doing. So obviously he's watching us out there work and cowboy, and he was like, that's what I need to be doing. So he went home and he this is, I don't know, he had gone to college on a fishing scholarship. Okay, so bass fishing scholarship.
I've not heard of one of those before.
Yeah, that's the most Alabama thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, roll tide, right?
That's
in
awesome.
In the Southeast, they've got them in high school now, fishing teams. So he went to Auburn University in Montgomery on a fishing scholarship. Those guys are way ahead of the curve on marketing and video, social media. Everybody does that.
You mean like guys who go to college, by them guys?
Well,
like the fishing guys, right?
but the professional fish, professional.
Oh,
fishing.
Really?
Yeah, it's
okay.
I mean,
how so? I mean, because I know all I'm just picturing is a guy who's catching tournament-sized bass or something, and then he's getting a scholarship from that. How does that help you with marketing?
Well, because those guys have to sell their self. Fishing is that they're looking for sponsors, and sponsors don't really care if you win, but they do care if you have eyeballs on you, right? So that's the fishing tournaments is about catching fish, but it's about selling stuff. That's what it's about. So he had been exposed to the video aspect of that. Now the Western industry is 10 years behind on internet at that point in time. And I mean, I had a flip phone, for heaven's sakes. I didn't have anything, nothing, no Facebook page, no nothing, and didn't have any interest in it. Very cranky individual I was. So he goes home and he searches online, doctoring cattle, cowboy stuff, whatever. And all that came up was a bunch of picture montages. And so if you look at today, GoPro today, or if you're a motorcycle racer, if you're a car, they're everywhere. Those GoPros are just everywhere. But there was nothing out there that anybody was doing. And so Dalton, very forward-thinking individual, he's like, man, if I can get Dad to wear one of these things while he's doctoring cattle. So he had one and he brought it. And he was like, just do it. And I'm like, man, I'm not. So I did. And the first three calves, I had it on my hat. First three calves I doctored.
So why did you do it for him, though? Did you believe him, or did you just do it for him? Because I'm a lot like you, John. You'd have a hard time getting me to put a GoPro on, just because I'm stubborn. And so,
no. Well, my thing is I was very. He's watching. Okay, so I'm the job consumed me. Like the only thing that I was concerned about was the health of the cattle and getting through my list for the day, right? And I had been doing that for a very long time. So I was 10, at this point, probably 9.5 years into that, and just smoked, There was no, like, I didn't miss a step. You just had to keep going, or you just didn't get done with your work. So, he taught me into it for no other reason than, hey man, this would just be cool. And so I did it, with no intentions of doing anything, other than just seeing what we got. Well, the first three calves that I did that day were just, and I only wore it for 3, were just epic. Like, I'd run it down, neck it is mud. It's just, they cut in behind me. My horse is just a slide and stop. I mean, it'd whirl around. I'd flip my slack, and I mean, it just perfect. And all three of them were just like that. I mean, it was just, or I'd throw a really long Houlihan, 3-coil, 30-foot shot, and hit that sucker over a water trough, And I just, I knew how cool this stuff was, but I honestly just left it between me, my horse, the animal I was doctoring, my dog, and God. I couldn't bring anybody with me to get to see it. So that was just a spot that I knew I couldn't share with anybody else. I knew if anybody ever saw it, it's infectious. You can't, I mean, it's too cool. The stuff that we would do every day, some guy a guy at a desk would look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, if I had one moment like that in my life, it would be so exciting." But we were doing it over and over and over, every day. So when I saw it on the computer, I really couldn't believe what I saw. It kind of awakened me to, you're actually in the saddle with me, so people can experience what we're getting to do every day, and what we're experiencing with how special. For me, the horse is so special. Your dog is so special. They travel, they do all the work. They take every step you ask them to. A dog will go 10 times further than you ever will. Horses are just so special to put their lives in your hand and then work with you like that. It's just incredible. So to get to share that with people. So when I saw it, it was like, holy cow, and I watched it over and over and over again. Originally, once again, I'm riding for the brand. My mind, as I see this stuff, everything that is in front of me can be seen on that camera. So just this particular day, I had filled my syringe up with medicine, and you could see that medicine right there. And I'm like, oh, there's an ad, oh, there's, this. So as I saw it, we had so many opportunities to market. My mind, I mean, it just came alive. It's like we got all this medicine, all these different wormers, all these different fly sprays. You could market this stuff so easily because we had all the seasons. We had spring, summer, fall. I mean, it would just come to you. You'd stand there one day, all the cattle are up at the bunks eating. You just pushed them up. You're making your list. Nothing stomping, no tails wagging. And then the next day, flies hatch and they're, stomping and swinging their tails. And we'd go to putting fly spray on. It's like, well, that's super easy. Don't let the flies stomp the profit out of your pocket. Use Sabre, whatever, fly spray. So that became my mindset. It's like, how do we do this? Well, nobody else was doing it. I mean, it's bizarre to think that we would have been the first people to start putting GoPro stuff out in the industry on the internet like that. So we stockpiled video. I didn't even know what Facebook was. None of that stuff. They made me a Facebook page. Still didn't know how to use it. I got a smartphone, had the GoPro. The first video we put out when they made the Facebook page, I remember how it was so stupid because I was so nervous. I don't even know why, but because I didn't do it anyway. And we had the Roping in the Snow was the name of the video. I edited it. I built it, and then Joni actually finished the thing. Anyways, that thing it went crazy. It was like, then you didn't really pay for Facebook ads. It was all organic. And it was just like, the views just ran. People were just, within a week, I had 5,000 followers. Um,
Wow.
it was just bizarre, and it wasn't me. So we saw a little niche right there. The to kind of shorten all this up, the drug companies wasn't interested because it was just an idea, and we were brand new at it. We were not anything at it. We were just whatever. We started inquiring on um, how to build a channel, how to get eyeballs, because we had a marketing guy tell us it's all about eyeballs. You got eyeballs on you, people will sponsor you. They'll blah blah blah, and nobody wanted to work with us. And so we looked down at what was in those videos, and the thing that shone the most was the rope because it's right there, And we had a dealership with Cowboy Cordage. So, anyways, long story short, by the time we got going, we built a website where we're still at the cattle company. Our whole house there on the ranch we were the poster child for something gone, an online store gone crazy. It was like a trail through the living room. We set up a shipping room. I worked at the cattle company. Dalton worked with me. She was a bookkeeper and took care of the cattle company, all their books, all their closeouts, all the everything. And our house looked like, it was a maze of ropes, and people were it was his insanity. It was just all on the floor. We had them stacked up, 40s, 50s, 60s, all these different. And at night, we'd come home and box and ship ropes, and UPS started showing up at our door. The mail lady, right out of that cattle company, that house that we lived in on the ranch. So pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
Wow. So the ropes that's because I know you guys kind of do other stuff now, right? You got like tack and supplies and apparel and like a video library, but the ropes were the beginning.
The ropes were the beginning, for sure. And we, that's when we started 310. And I don't know, Brent generously gave us one of the guys that owned the cattle company, the place I was working. He gave us the dealership. It took him some convincing. He didn't want to sell ropes. And I told him, I said, we're just wanting to do something on the side, and Joni, it's not a, anyways, he was like, yeah, sure. Okay. But anyways, that's kind of a whole nother trail to go down. But when he gave us the dealership, then we just started bringing in cut ropes from Cowboy Cordage and became a dealer for them. And that's, the rest is kind of history. So that was the first. I think honestly, don't really want to get into numbers, but I think the first from like October to December, and this for us was like, couldn't even believe, we just watched them run up. But I think that first October to that first Christmas, and we're just winging it, man. We made the rope sales were like 65 grand.
Wow.
That first little bit, and that was just us organically posting stuff on Facebook, and then we got the website up. Joni built the website, and then it started kind of Cadillac, and then we started learning how to market. And it's just been, for us, it's just been completely and total learn as you go. And we've learned from some really good people that know how to do this stuff. Like my cousin Peter Goodwin, he owns Groove Rings, which is the silicone ring company.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yep, he owns that, and so he's got a marketing department that Dalton and Joni would go spend some time with, and they'd help us out in the beginning, telling us what we needed to do next. Now you need to do this. Now you need to do that.
Yeah.
That's handy.
Super helpful.
So, what does it look like? Because I feel like a lot of people in a lot of industries, but the Western industry is definitely one of those deals where people maybe have jobs like a cowboying job or something like that, with a goal of eventually becoming independent one way or another, where it's like, I'm going to go ride horses for the public, or I'm going to sell ropes, or I'm going to, lease some land and get my own herd going, however that is. And I'm always curious to hear about how people decide to make that jump from, like you said, the thing on the side to how do I take this and like, we're going to go and run with this and kind of be our independent deal now.
Right. Well, man, honestly, we never quit. I learned from, we just never quit working. I worked at the cattle company, starting cattle. When I tell you I'm there 24/7, it's, Joni, she had 6 different bookkeeping accounts for different companies, or that she would keep their books. So she was a bookkeeper. So she'd travel around to their place of business, do their books. She kept those. She also, for the cattle company we worked for, she modernized that thing. So we just kept all of that afloat. Dalton worked for me, or for us at the cattle company, and we worked as long as we could not stand it. And we kept all those irons in the fire and hot, for probably 2.5 years, maybe 2 years. But we had to we knew 310 had to have a foundation to be able to support us, and so we had to stockpile not only video whenever we were going to leave, because when we left there'd be a deficit. So we're not going to go take another job, but we need to be able to market. So we stockpiled video for probably 1.5 years every day, and just had this huge video log that we could use in all aspects. And then Dalton quit work for the cattle company and worked from his house for 1 year, for 310, for just pennies, like nothing. And then we went until we couldn't go anymore. And truth be told, they let me go from the cattle company, because we just had so much going on. So it was time for me to go. I was going to leave. I told them I'd work one more fall, to help them through the fall run, and they just told me, they said, it's good. You don't have to do it. Just, go do what you're going to do. We'll give you can have a month to find another place to live. Here's they gave me one of the horses for part of my severance pay, and then gave us a month's salary. So they were good folks. But yeah, we just waited until the foundation was there and we could draw off of 310. We kind of looked at when it started like it was a seed, and it needed to grow roots deep enough that it would support us. So we just hung in there with it till we could see that, and then we kind of got kicked out of the nest, and we had to do it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine they could kind of see the handwriting on the wall. I've got another question, and I don't want to dig into your personal deal or anything, so answer it however you want. But I was going to ask you, like, while you were there building your 310 brand, did they ever bring up the fact that you were using, video and stuff of their outfit to build your brand, or did you ever have to work something out with them? Because I know there's people in similar situations where I'm sure they work somewhere and they're trying to do a startup on the side, but
Right.
the place they work is really their underpinnings.
Right. Well, for us, honestly, I rode for that brand, even though we had 310. Like I only promoted them. Like if you watch our early videos, the videos that we would do, were of our horses. They were of our dogs. They were of the people that we worked with that would come in and help us. Like I would do a highlight video for them. It was of the cattle company. They didn't need, like stocker companies don't need advertisement. They don't need anybody to know what they do because everything that they do is in the cattle market. They're selling stockers, so you don't need advertisement for that. But we weren't promoting ourselves. We were promoting everything about what it was that we were doing, right? So my appreciation for my horse brought that's what I wanted to highlight. It wasn't me. I was just riding the horse. When we started taking external video where like we had a videographer come out and shoot me doctoring cattle, the videos were named Little Red is my horse, or just our string of horses that we had because they were so special. The bridleless videos that we did were about the horses and the connection that you can have with the horse. Those doctrine videos were is incredible to get. So they did not have any problem with that because honestly, we were building a video log of their life, our lifestyle, what was happening behind the scenes. And it had nothing to do, like everybody had credit. Everybody, it wasn't even about 310. It wasn't about me, because I'm not a self promoter. This has just happened based on as a byproduct of us highlighting other people and what they do. So even now, like when we go someplace to work, it's never about us. We're very, like, we might be in the video roping, but it's 310 presents Sea Punch Ranch, or 310 presents the ID branding, the ID ranch, in Wyoming. So now it has morphed in. Some of the YouTube stuff that we did was on the Overland. All of that was us working, and Dalton kind of wanted to do a blog style, video series, and we did that. But for the most part, they didn't have a problem with it, and they didn't need advertisement. So as long as I had a really good relationship with those guys, and they thought it was cool what they were getting to see because they didn't get to see me do it a lot. And a lot of it surprised them,
Yeah.
So what was going on and how their cattle were being handled, and what they were getting from it, benefiting from it. And honestly, there in the very beginning, we had so much traffic because that thing hit so hard. We had so many opportunities of like cactus feeders, second largest feeder of cattle in the world, called me and wanted to come and fly in and talk to Brent about supplying cattle to their feed yard from our area, And so there were a ton of opportunities like that came up from people seeing how we handled the cattle, how we were doctoring, how we were processing down there on those high risk stockers.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of a rising tide lifted all the boats sort of deal.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Like I stayed in contact with the owner nonstop. All the videos that we would post, I would send to him and let him, go, oh yeah, that's awesome. And then it was always about, like the medicine company trying to promote something about what we were doing. I would still be there had it not gotten to the point where, it was just time to leave the nest. We wouldn't have been able to grow. Like 310 wouldn't have been able to thrive staying there. So it was a very gracious place to get to work and to be. They're great people, but we needed to go so we could execute and have the freedom to, execute our plans, our ideas that came up without having any, a bunch of red tape to go through. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of ask you that because, Joe was asking you about the steps that you go through to start your own thing, to kind of make that step yourself. But I think that's a great thing for especially a lot of young people coming up to remember. And I'm kind of saying it to myself is, when you leave a place, that's as important how you treat those folks as you worry about yourself going forward. Because in this world we live in, the Western horsemanship, rope and all these things, this community is pretty small. And so you want to remember that rear view mirror as much as the front facing window screen. And so I think that's really cool. And that's great advice to just hear how you did it. But hey, so something I want to back up to though, I'm going to just keep prying. I'm still curious about the name 310. Now I know that it has to do with a Bible verse, I believe. But I'm just curious. Obviously it means a lot to you guys to have it in your title. Could you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah. So 310 is Philippians 3:10. It's kind of our family's verse that we obviously put out in front of us. It's just there, but it's Philippians 3:10. So it says, for my determined purposes and this is the Amplified, so it's really long. For my determined purposes that I may know him, that's Christ, that I may become more progressively and intimately, progressive and intimately, dadgummit, Ben. For my determined purposes, I've said this a million times. I can't believe I'm catching up. For my determined purposes that I may know him, that I may become more progressively and intimately related to him, perceiving and understanding and recognizing the wonders of his person more clearly, even to understand his suffering. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I pulled up my Bible app while you were talking.
Yeah.
In my version, it says that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and may share his sufferings, becoming like him in his death.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, that's amazing. So how did that become so synonymous with your family and something you wanted to put forward as a brand ultimately? Because everyone probably looks at it and thinks, oh, that's a cool brand that John Darnell has. But obviously it has a lot more meaning beyond looking like a cool brand.
It does. Well, it came out of brokenness. Really, I had gone. I told you I divorced or got a divorce from Dalton and Lakin's mother. In that period in time, that just wrecked me. So I had a big start over, and that was when I was like 27 or so. So when it wrecked me, that's when I kind of came back to Christ. That through that hardship and that brokenness, I never thought that would happen to me, but it did, and so I had a restart there. For me, during that time, I went through a lot of what everybody goes through. Grief, denial. You got to accept it, and then you start getting on the other side of it. And for me, I was looking for purpose, right? So I was thinking, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? So I was kind of thinking and praying about it. My dad was a marriage and family counselor and a pastor, so I'd kind of talked to him. But anyways, I had moved back in that point in time. I was living with my folks because I lost it all. And my mom had a little one of those little calendars that you flip every day, and it's got a Bible verse on it. Well, right in front of the sink, I'm washing my hands, and I look up, and there she's got one of those deals, and it says, "For my determined purposes that I may know Him," Philippians 3:10. So I read it, and I'm like, just walk off. And so next day, she doesn't flip it. I walk up, I'm doing something else. "For my determined purposes that I may know Him," Philippians 3:10, and I walk off. Third day, it takes some of us a while to see it. "For my determined purpose is that I may know Him." And I was like, purpose, what is this? This is what I'm looking for. What is that? So I take off, and I'm reading the Amplified because I'm trying to absorb everything that I can, and it's very fluid in how it talks. It's got a lot of adjectives, and so I go up there and I read it, and it just comes alive to me. I'm like, that's my purpose, is to come to know Him, and that's not just mine. Well, will be everybody's purpose, first and foremost. So that stuck with me, and so from there, that's what I determined that would be my goal, was to come to know Him. So in and out of that is how I started pursuing life, and going, all right, where are you right here? In my horse training, my horsemanship, the things that I would do. All of a sudden, and you guys may have experienced this, I don't know, all of a sudden it was the two-dimensional relationship that you may have with a horse, that you're, trying to communicate something to it. All of a sudden it would be me and the horse, and then it would be I'm the horse. This is what God's trying to teach me, and so that became a very rich part of what I was doing as far as my horsemanship training. I could just see my relationship with God through the horse I may be working with. So for me, that came alive because He's in everything. It doesn't matter whether it's horsemanship, or you're training your dog, or you're running a corporation, or you're doing a podcast. If you're selling ropes, you can look at that and go, where are you at in this thing? And it will expose itself because it's there, So, yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, actually, I won't totally derail this whole thing, but while you were talking, an image that flashed in my head was that, if you're just pursuing the horse, say, then
Right.
that's your goal and that's all you have. But if you make your life, if for a Christian, if you make your life pursuing Christ, and all of a sudden you realize the horse is really like a workbook,
Yep.
and it's not the goal, but it's an extremely important help in your life. And that whole saying, the horse is a mirror to your soul, takes on a really amplified meaning all of a sudden, which at times will haunt you a little bit. But but anyway, that's pretty interesting. I can see how that would have impacted you a lot, and then kind of stuck in there and become kind of your flag in a way. So
yeah. I would say, something I did learn, and I'll share this because I say it's in everything. There for a little bit, when you kind of start seeing it, you like, I've got an answer. This is it. And what I learned was, is it really doesn't matter that God's the author and the finisher and the architect of the whole deal. So if you dig deep enough into whatever it is that you've got a passion to pursue, or that God has put into you to pursue it, you'll find Him in that way. It's not. If you're, it can be agriculture related. It can be building a road. It can be the foundation of a house. It can be how you build whatever. But it's there. even computers, all of it. If you dig deep enough, you're going to find his fingerprints, and that's what it is. It's just it's his handiwork. We're his handiwork. It's so it's interesting if you kind of play with that. So.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because it's one of those deals. Well, it's like the calendar, right? It's like you're not going to see it until you realize you're looking for it,
Right.
right? And then,
Right.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, gosh, it just changes. It changes your perspective on everything.
Yeah.
Because you can look at it in a way. I don't know. It's more like it's less like things are good and bad. It's more like, oh, let's like see how this is set up and see like what my path is and what I'm supposed to learn today. And
Right.
it
Yeah.
it really it definitely kind of changes. I mean, it changes everything. But for me, my personal experience is like it's been a big perspective change.
Right.
When you start kind of pursuing that, as opposed to, I'm trying to be the horse starter in my county, or I'm trying to do this, or like pursuing your kind of worldly goals.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And more often than not, a lot of that stuff kind of falls into place too, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to grab it so hard.
That's right. Yeah. For me, I always say, I mean, I've started saying this a pretty good while ago, but I'm like, I'm not leading anything. I'm following. I'm just following. I'm following this trail, or it's almost like a river. It's just moving, and I adapt to it. But I'm a follower, which makes me a leader, in a lot of different ways. But this thing kind of takes on a life of its own, and then you find yourself just moving with the rhythm in which it's kind of taking you. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. So speaking of the river,
Okay.
the most recent place the river took you was Nevada.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we visited, I guess, right before you were fixing to leave on that trip, and you sounded pretty excited about the whole deal.
Yeah.
And then we talked again, but I because we talked, I was kind of keeping up with your Instagram a little more and seeing like, oh, well, what's he up there? Yeah, what's he up to out there and everything. And I mean, compared to a lot of places, that just looks like the surface of the moon out there, man. It seems like a whole different deal. Can you talk about like kind of what went down there and the differences from what your previous experiences have been? Because you talked about the Southeast, and I know you guys have been up in Wyoming, you said, but
Yep.
can you talk about what's different out there, and getting to be around some of those guys you look up to and everything?
Yes. Yeah, that was a very unique experience, that's for sure, and very, very, man, humbled to get to go do it. The way that thing worked out was, it just worked. It just happened. So, the way it worked out, Andrea called us. It was almost a year or so in the making, but they were doing the Buckaroo's tradition deal. She called to see if we'd want to sponsor that, and then rope in it. And so when she called and told us what it was going to be, I looked at Dalton and I was like, because we were already that fall, we were going to the Pro-Am. We had to go to Italy to do a clinic, and then they were in November. So it was three things, just boom, 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 and all of them were major. And I was like, there's no way that we miss going to that Buckaroo's, that BT gathering. And I was like, the people, I mean, it was incredible. So we just made it work. Like, no matter whatever, we're doing it. So I'm talking to her, and she's telling me about the Sea Punch and their spring and fall wagon. And I was like, how do you get hired on for that? She goes, you just come. if y'all wanna come work, come on. And so I had known some people that had rolled in and out of there, and so in my mind, I'm thinking, I said, okay. I said, if we can make it happen, we will. We get through the roping there in Winnemucca, and then see if we can make it happen. So I'm thinking that guys are rolling in and out of there all the time, kind of short time guys that are on that
Sure.
wagon, and it's 6 week wagon. Well, that wasn't the case at all. So they literally they need help. So I quickly realized that it was Scott and Andrea Van Leuven, Caleb Holly, Dave Weaver. So they got 4 on the crew there, and then Scott, Andrea, and Caleb are all full-time employees of Sea Punch. Dave's on the wagon like we are, and then me, Abby Clausen, and then Maddie Brandstetter, who they work with us. We're the crew, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" But we're it, and it's a 2 million acre ranch, 1 fence on the place, and I'm humbled to even get to talk about it, guys. Because it to say it was epic was an understatement. But so we show up, and it's 65 miles by 75 miles, I think, wide, long and wide. It's 59 miles to camp from the paved road. So we just to continue to kind of give you the perspective on the size. They had a bull get out on the neighbors, and me and Abby went with Scott to pick it up. We drove 3 hours to Winnemucca. That's where it was at, on the ranch, dirt roads. Picked him up, 3 hours back. So it was it's a big place.
Yeah.
Big place. So and to say there's, I think, 4,000 head of Mustangs on there, 1,000 head of burros, and then their cattle. So yeah, different.
Yeah. And so what was talk about what goes on for a spring wagon. Like what did that look like?
Day to day.
Like a day in the life.
Okay, so and once again, I'm humbled to you guys should call Dave and Andrea. They would totally do your podcast, or not Dave, but Dave would probably do it. But Scott. Anyways, he so that ranch is, and we're learning all this, so we didn't go in knowing it. Everywhere we go, we have to learn how they do things. So, and it doesn't matter where it is. We're always the visiting team. So I say this humbly that I'm even getting to talk about it. So, they would be considered a harvest ranch. So they never pull their bulls off. They're calving year round. They're so when and they brand and pull cattle pretty much year round. Summertime they work on water. Spring and fall are their heavy seasons, so they'll have a spring wagon and a fall wagon, where they try to go out and get as many calves, wean cattle, and then slicks off the place. So, but they pretty much, I mean, when we left, it's still going on. So there's really no way that they get it all, because it's too big, and there's only 1 fence. So
yeah. Well, that was my other question. So there's no like attempt to really manage where these cattle are at any point in time.
There is, but it's mostly to do with water, right? So
sure. Okay. Control them that way.
Right. And so Scott did a great job. He just laid out, basically the 3 weeks or the month that we were there, where we would do, and he's very strategic about how we would make where we were gathering. So you may go out and make a gather, and they glass cattle, so they take their binoculars and they look for them, and so they find out where they are. They may move overnight. You're fixing to make a gather, and they may move, and you get out there and you ride your circle, and there may be 10 pairs, or there might be 2 bulls, 8 cows, 2 calves that need branding, and some calves that need weaned. Or you may go out there and get 150, and you got a 6 or 7 man crew to brand and pull weaned cattle, and then rope slicks. So
are you hauling? So are they hauling the weaned ones off like that day too? Because if you're like 3 hours or whatever, how that's a lot of trucking that you may or may not have to do in a day, right?
Right. So kind of the way it works is he lays out the circle and you make the gather. So they don't have a lot of branding traps on this place. I think we were in 1, 2, 3. We were in 3 branded traps. We did open road deered several days. And then you might find a fence corner to hold them up in. We did that for probably 4 days. But this is what you do. So let's say, and I'll just paint you probably the biggest day we had. We went down, we made it a big gather. It might have been 85 head in this gather. We pushed them up into a fence corner. So that's bulls, cows, calves, slicks. Slick would be a calf that had never been touched, and a slick could be, he could weigh 500 or he could weigh 1,400. Or anywhere in between. And then you'd have your weaned cattle. So you push them all up in the corner, and then Scott would go, he'd make a fire right there. He'd just pull a bunch of sage up. He would build a fire, and then we'd hold roe deer. It's very interesting to see how all this worked, because having a small crew, you can't go fast because you got to hold roe deer.
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, right there. So are they, again, I'm picturing like very surface of the moon type classic giant Nevada ranch, right? Is he, to build this fire, is he like trucking out firewood? Like it's not there's, okay.
No, there's a lot of forage out there. The cattle are greasy, fat, slick. So everything in that thing, we learned this. Scott is he's very educated on all the forage out there, but there's grass, all different kinds of grass. He called it browse. This is something I've never heard of, but browse would be like your sage and all the different kind of bushes. Everything out there is edible to the point where it would be like in our part of the country, like at certain points in time, fescue is really good. Your Bermuda's really good. And so all their forage, different parts of the year, is super high in protein, super rich in nutrients. So those cattle, they feed, and there's tons of it out there. So Nevada, that ranch had tons of forage. The ground was really good. It's sand, lots of forage, lots of sage, but good ground. Not dangerous ground. And it's like an arena with forage in it, basically.
Yeah, perfect spot to cowboy.
Yeah. Now you could travel in it really, really easily. I've described Nevada as desolate, and Wyoming is dangerous. Like you die at any moment, and I'm sure there's parts of Nevada that we got up in some good country, but for the most part, Wyoming is dangerous. It's dangerous out there. Anyway, so he'd set up the branding. He'd go and if we were let's say we were at a corral, and it would just be a small pin, like say 60 by 80 maybe, and then it would have the corrals would have maybe one loadout, like a one pin that you could wean cattle up into, and then either a ground loadout or a big truck loadout. So there we would sort off the wean cattle and load them on the truck, right? Or in the slicks. So weaners is what they would call them. They could weigh anywhere from, just depending on how deep Scott wanted to pull them, 500 to, like I said, a slick could be 9, 10, 1,100 pounds, So he built a fire. We'd typically go in first, and if we were in a pen, we would pull all the wean cattle off the slicks. Then we'd go in and we'd brand the cattle. So small crew like that, we would go in 2 at a time. Everybody take turns. We roped everything. So you go in, head a calf. Didn't have to go fast. They didn't want you staying in the roe deer. When you necked it, wasn't much. You didn't need to get short. You just needed to come out with it so that you held the roe deer together. So they come out on a long handle, or we would, and that's what they wanted. So then whoever's turn it was to go in there and heel, you'd heel it, take it to the fire, lay it down, and then they really didn't want you necking another one until that calf was done and on its way back, and then you'd neck another one. So, and then you drag it in, take turns holding roe deer, rebuilding. A lot of times you could have a calf set up and neck it and just have it standing there, and then when they let that calf up, for efficiency's sake, take it on in. But it's only one man on the ground, and that was usually Scott. And so it was a lot of Brandons that we go to want you to go. They're just fast. They're just fast-paced deal, and so you just kind of, yes, very efficient. They had a lot to do, but they just wanted everything calm and just take your time. Not a big deal to get any hurt,
Yeah.
So
what are you gonna do? Go out to eat after? Like you're like you're in the middle of nowhere. You might as well just enjoy what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So the if you like, okay, so that big day that I'm talking about, we pushed all the cattle up in that corner. We probably had 30, maybe 35 calves to brand. We did that. And then we ate a quick bite to eat for lunch and still kept the cattle sitting in that corner. Then we went in to pull off the weaners and the slicks. We got video out on this. A lot of those Instagrams, you see us roping really big stuff. So there were 21 head of wean cattle and slicks in that deal. And you go in, one guy goes in, heads it, and then when you neck it, they're coming out. I mean, they're coming out. So you just go with them, you get them out of the herd. There's no drag. You're not going to drag something that big. You just get them to float out beside you. And then your healer comes in and heals them out there in that sage. And then you tie them down. So it looked like a buffalo hunt out there after we got done. That particular day, I think we had 21, 22 head down all at one time. And then we just bring the trailer back up, and they used halters. We had 2 halters, and we'd halter one calf's, ready to go, and then the other one we would load.
Okay.
So,
and so can you talk? Trailer. So I've never heard about the haltering them to get them on. So is that like it's just a halter, like with a long rope, and then you're kind of directing them on there, or like how does that work exactly?
Well, that was that's an interesting technique. So it's basically a rope halter. It's a horse halter. You put it on and you kind of tie it with a quick release. Super tight. So the lead ropes, they're cotton tree line lead ropes, and they're probably 14 foot long. So you back up to the calf, and you got one guy on the ground or in the trailer. He takes that lead rope and he picks that calf's head up onto the back of the trailer, right? So you can picture he's in there, he's got the lead rope and backed up. The calf's head is on the trailer, the rest of his body's on the ground. And then you take that rope and run it around one of the posts or the pipe uprights. And a guy will be sitting on the side of the trailer. So you put that rope in to where when he grabs a hold of it on the outside of the trailer, and he's usually sitting on the fender. When that calf sucks down or sucks back, it makes it tighter. But when he goes forward, you can pull slack and get him closer. So you do it. It's just a guy doing it. You're not pulling them on. You kill off your horses. We did that too. But so whenever you let them up, untie them, in theory, they should just get up and jump on them, right? So, but they don't. They fight a little bit. So it gets a little Western. So
is it for the guy holding the lead rope? Is it like a kind of a physical thing? Like I know you said it gets tight, but can you just kind of hold on and let him pull on? The trailer, basically.
Right. The way you run it around that post or around that pipe, it bites itself. So it's really you're just really sitting in a lazy boy. If you go back to the Instagram, some of the video I posted, you'll see Scott sitting on the fender like with his legs kicked back and he's just holding the thing.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, if they jump forward, you can take rope from them, so you can make it shorter to where they're further in the trailer. So in it, a lot of the cattle they'll fuss right there for a minute, kind of fight it, and then they get freed up and kind of bounce forward, and they'll jump right on. If they don't, you just drive off with the truck, and they get freed up that way. So they got no option but to go.
Yeah.
And so their feet start moving and they start trying to figure out, I can't go backwards. I can't go this way. I can't go that way. And then eventually they make a big lunge forward and they'll jump on. So it sure saves your horses. If we had small numbers, and we found like we'd be driving home back to camp. We might run by 4 cows and 5 weaners, and we just jump out, take the horses off, hold them up right there, rope those wean calves, and load them on the trailer that way without tying them down, the kind of the conventional way. But anyways, those were big days.
Yeah. Sounds like
quite the experience.
I'm sure it was a heck of an adventure, though.
It was great to get to work with those guys. There's a lot of things they do different that make a lot of sense. But it's like the golden rule is don't, stay out of the herd. Rope the calf as it's coming out if you can. Rope off the edge. Try to maintain the integrity of the cattle as far as the herd goes, because if they ever learn they can kind of get away, that's where you lose. So especially when if you're roping in an open row deer like that, if you go into open row deer, say you got 15 cows, calves and weaners, and you rope the first one, you try to get them out. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the cattle just stand there chewing their cud. They're wild. They leave, and you got to bring them back and get out of there with the herd, because you're training those cattle every time you handle them. So if they learn they can run off, then you're in trouble. So
yeah, that's cool. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that they do out there, and just with the style of roping and horsemanship, like it's associated with good stockmanship, right? But like talk about where it's a complete necessity, right? You know, it's not like trot over there and go close the gate. Like if they leave, they're gone.
Right. There's no gate.
Yeah.
There's no fence.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're kind of the gate and the fence. So
Yeah.
but
That's cool.
yeah, the golden rules of the thing, it you know, honestly, it you go slow, you take your time, but it gets fast. It's not like like you have to be able to go fast, and you have to be able to handle stuff that's big, and that's kind of a you know, I've always been a proponent of being balanced. You want to be able to make a long shot when you can, but you're gonna have to run something down. If you don't have that skill set, then you're not balanced. You know, you're not you don't have the skills you need to do the job efficiently. So the kind of the ranch roping world it's a very put together, very slow, very you know, the cattle will be a lot of times not too stingy. Not our cattle. Our cattle, we've always kept our cattle really stingy for those deals, but it gets fast. So you can go into a herd that's standing there, and when you neck a big, salty 7-8 weight, you know, heifer, you're gonna go somewhere. You can hit the horn, but you got to get out of that herd. So it's basically she hits, she goes. Your Mach 9 hit the horn, and your healer has got to be coming in there to basically save you. So
yeah,
there's no big fancy shots going on out there. You're going to throw long forehands, sidearms, hula hands. It's very practical, and that's the way I like it, because you're getting back down to the basics of the way it really is. And anyway, you get a real appreciation for things on the move, because that's the way they want them. It's on the move. It's not standing them up. So
yeah,
I don't think we stood anything up.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, Joe and I, we're all about stuff on the move.
Yeah, we're all about on the move.
Right.
So pretty into that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Walk right into that one.
Yeah, you really tied a bow on that, John.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of on the move, you know, we talked about how successful you guys have been at selling ropes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So while you guys are out there traveling around, who's managing the shop and shipping ropes out and doing all that stuff?
Okay, so we got a really good crew. Joni, my wife, she's kind of the CEO, CFO, CO of all of that. So she's here. We've got a shop manager, Kirsten Clausen. She does a fantastic job, and then we've got some other that tie ropes, that wax cottons, stretch cottons, bookkeeper. It's at any point in time, there's 5-6 people here running the rope shop. So Dalton, my son, he takes care of all the marketing, social media stuff, which is a full-time gig for him. So yeah, great crew of folks here that fortunately don't want to rope. they want to pay their bills, but there only needs to be a certain amount of cowhands, you know, looking out the window going, man, I really wish I was out there, you know. So
yep. Yeah, we want to keep that workload a little bit hungry. I like that.
That's right.
Well, John, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to do this with us. It's been informative and a lot of fun to just hear about your journey and how this came to be. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up then. We're going to stop recording, but don't hang up yet.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. See ya.